Excellent. Good evening and welcome to the August 17th, 2020 meeting of the City of Summit Zoning Board of Adjustment. My name is Stephen Spur and I am chairman of the Summit Zoning Board. In accordance with New Jersey Statute 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to a newspaper of record and has been posted in City Hall. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. This meeting is being conducted virtually via video conferencing in lieu of meeting in the council chamber of Summit City Hall, Summit, New Jersey. This meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube page. Members of the public can view the meeting by following the link provided on the agenda. Dennis Galvin is the zoning board's attorney. He will advise the board members on matters of law and is the key interface with the applicant's attorney. Mr. Galvin does not vote on the applications. Chris Nicola is a city employee and is the zoning board secretary. Mr. Nicola works with applicants on getting their applications together and planning our agendas and keeping our meeting minutes. Mr. Nicola does not vote on the applications. Our board consists of 7 regular members and up to 4 alternates. All members can participate in the hearings tonight, but a maximum of 7 can vote. Most applications require a simple majority to be approved. Some applications require 5 affirmative votes to be approved. You'll be told which majority will be required before we begin our deliberations. Mr. Nicola, please call the roll.
Chairman Spur.
Yeah, here.
Vice Chairwoman Newell.
Here.
Mr. Yuko.
Here.
Mr. Laderi.
Here.
Mr. Steiner is excused. Mr. Mullen.
Here.
Ms. Schwartzstein.
Here.
Ms. Hensel is excused. Mr. Millay.
Here.
And Mr. Loikitz.
Here.
For the record, Mr. Galvin's here. You have a quorum. You can proceed.
We generally hear the cases in the order they are listed on the agenda. We try to have each hearing last no more than 30 minutes, but we do understand that some cases are too complex to be heard within that time frame. Each hearing begins with the applicant or their attorney giving an overview of the application and the variances that are required. We then hear from any expert witnesses the applicant may have to help explain the application and why the variances are needed. The board members may ask questions of the applicant, their attorney, and the expert witnesses. Once the board members and the board professionals are done with their questioning, the public will have an opportunity to ask questions. This is not the time to tell us what you think about this case. That opportunity comes at the end of the hearing. Before you ask your questions, we need to know who you are and where you live. It is important that our court reporter be able to keep a clear and accurate public record. Please state your name before speaking or asking a question. And please do not talk over each other. This is even more important under the current circumstances. After all witnesses have been heard, members of the audience have their second opportunity to speak, and at that time, you may express your opinion, positive or negative, about the application. Then the public hearing is closed, and we go into executive session where the board members discuss the case and vote. You will be able to listen to our executive session, but you will not normally be able to participate in our discussion. Most applications are heard and decided in the same evening. If a case requires additional information or testimony that cannot be presented tonight, we will carry your case to another date and it will not be decided. Krista Anderson, the city zoning officer, has asked that I remind all applicants that they must read carefully the resolution that documents the zoning board's decision and to pay particular attention to the conditions contained in the resolution. For example, if a landscaping plan is required, you must obtain one and submit it to John Linson, the city's forester. If a grading plan is required, you must have one prepared by a civil engineer and submit 3 copies along with the application fee to the city's engineering division. Failure to satisfy all conditions in a resolution will result in a delay in approving your application, as it will cause extra work for city zoning staff. The resolutions documenting the board's decision will normally be available 1 month after we decide the case. When I call your name, please tell me how many witnesses you have and whether you think you can complete your case in 30 minutes. So first on the agenda for this evening is 27 Linden Place, the Kovaricks. Are we here?
Hi.
There we
We're
are.
here.
Hello. How many witnesses do you have this evening?
We're just our architect.
Just your architect. Okay. All right. Next on the agenda, 17 Elm Place, Parisi Builders and Associates.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Samantha Alfonso of Dempsey and Sheehan on behalf of the applicant, Parisi Builders and Associates. And we have two witnesses, the applicant and his engineer.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, 47 Lennox Road, Kurt and Jessica Lemkow. I see you there. Hello,
With
any witnesses?
Of Dempsey and Sheehan. We have three witnesses, one reserved witness in the event of questions. The application is relatively uncomplicated and hopefully won't be controversial. I think 30 to 45 minutes will do it.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. Welcome. Okay. Yes, Mr. Galvin.
It might make sense to put Bart's case ahead of Samantha's.
Without objection from Ms. Alfonso, I'll take Mr. Galvin's advice on that one. So let's proceed then first with 47 Lennox Road, the Lemkows. Mr. Sheehan, you want to kick us off?
Didn't you have a first case that was
Yeah,
related
You
to?
want us to hear 27 Linden first, Dennis? Sorry,
yes. I'm sorry.
misunderstood. Okay, so we'll do 27 Linden, 47 Lennox, and then 17 Elm Place. All right, I understand.
I'm thinking big guy. Yeah.
All right, thanks for the clarity. Okay, then we will ask the Kovaricks to begin. 27 Linden
You
Place.
can tell on their face they're relieved. They're like, what happened? We were first.
No, that's good. That's why we move slowly here. All right, Kovaricks, if you'd like to kick us off, we'll need you to be sworn in by Mr. Galvin first.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Say your full name for the record, spell your last name, ladies first. Somebody stop looking at papers or go on mute.
Mr. Millay, would you mind going on mute for us? I think that was, thank you. All right.
All right.
I said yes, and my first name is Thea. T as in Tom, H as in Happy, E as in Edward, A as in Apple. Last name Kovarik, Kovarik.
Sir?
Yes, I do. Matt Kovarik, Kovarik.
You're very lucky that she describes the age as happy. Please.
Agreed. So my wife and I have lived in Summit for 5 years now, and in the area for the last 10. Linden Place is a street in an area of town that we've always wanted to live in. So we were ecstatic when we were able to purchase the house. We look forward to raising our two daughters in this house. They are 11 and 9. And we've basically outgrown our current house. So we're looking to move to this area of town and to do a renovation to the house. The prior owner had put an addition on the first floor of the house and did not do the same addition on the second floor of the house. So there's currently a flat roof over the back portion of the house that is deteriorating and is not the best function nor aesthetically pleasing. So we're looking to bump out the second floor to have the roof function better and to have the house look more like the other houses in the neighborhood. We also are going to either restore the cedar shake that is underneath the vinyl siding. Currently there's vinyl siding, which isn't really in line with the neighborhood. So we're gonna either restore the cedar shake that's underneath the vinyl siding or install hardy plank.
Now you gotta choose.
But right now,
Yeah.
whichever one you guys prefer. No, really? Do we really have to?
Yeah, well, it matters to what the board's going to approve. So often architects will be like, we might do this, we might do that. This is a lawsuit where you're trying to give us evidence as to what you're going to do. And we have to test out what looks good. So we should be going with what you tell us. Now, if you learn that you want to do plan B instead of plan A, you'll send us a letter and tell us we'd like to make this change because of the following, and the board will either say yes or no.
Okay.
And I'm not beating you guys up. I get
Okay.
crazy about
And
architecture.
we're gonna replace it with the hardy plank.
All right. it's a cementitious thing. Everyone's doing it lately. It's kind of the style. Okay.
Mhm. Do you have anything to add?
No, not right now.
We also have our architect, Stephen Kowalski, on the call.
All right. Is Stephen ready?
I am.
All right. Boy, why are you sideways?
Oh, hold on.
There we go.
Attaboy. Raise your hand.
I've got a slightly strange request for Chris. I'm using the audio on my phone, but I'd like to share the screen with my computer. So I should be showing up twice. SEK is my screen, and I should be showing up as Stephen Kowalski on my phone. Are we able to share my?
I see the SEK. We can do that. Stephen,
Okay.
raise your right hand. You swear or affirm testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Say your full name for the record, spell your last name.
Stephen Kowalski, Kowalski.
And you would agree with me that you've appeared before this board on several occasions.
I have, yes.
Mr. Chairman, we accept Mr. Kowalski's qualifications as an architect.
We will. Welcome, Mr. Kowalski.
All right.
Thank you.
And do we got him on the other thing? Did you share the screen, Chris?
Yeah, he should be able to. If not, I can do it for him.
All right, go.
Actually, could you do it for me, Chris? I've got the tiny icon and I'm not seeing the link.
Sure. Hold on. What do you want, your site plan up or the architecturals?
Oh no, I thought you could share my screen. You're saying you can share the file. Give me 1 second. Here we go.
There you go.
Did that work? Okay.
Yep.
So I'm gonna start with just going through the variances. We did submit a revised sheet, which I believe was distributed to the board. This is page A9. And currently there are several non-conforming issues on the site. What I did, my previous plan did not note the extent of the variances, so this updated one makes that more clear. So if we start from the top, we're fine with lot size, lot width. Front yard setback is currently 0.4 feet over. We're not making any change there. Krista mentioned in her review, we're changing the portico, but the portico meets the size threshold where that's not considered against the setback, so that remains. Side yard setback, existing non-conforming to remain. Conforming on rear yard and combined side yards. Impervious coverage is existing non-conforming. We're improving that by a small margin in terms of coverage, but we're actually, in our mind, making a drastic improvement by providing a groundwater, stormwater management system, which is not required. And you'll notice that in the engineer's report asking for calculations. We did that as a benefit to the neighborhood. But the size, we're not increasing any roof area. So the roof area actually decreases, but as a benefit to the neighborhood, we're proposing stormwater management while decreasing impervious coverage. Floor area ratio is one that we're increasing by 4.58%. Which will exceed the allowable by 6.43% or 723 square feet. As Mr. Kovarik mentioned, there's an existing one-story addition, very out of keeping with the neighborhood in terms of aesthetics. So what we're proposing to do is go up and over that, make the addition much more traditional in keeping with the neighborhood. But as a result of that, that does increase the floor area. Building coverage, we're also improving that slightly by taking off some pretty unsightly appendages from the side of the house. So the only variance that we're requesting is the floor area ratio. If I zoom out on this page, I have a couple, well, the site plan, which you can see here. The front yard setback existing non-conforming, the rear patio, which we're removing and replacing. And let me bring up another page with the photos. So in the neighborhood, there are a number of colonials. Here is the one-story addition on the back of the property. Really not at all in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. You can note the vinyl siding, also not in keeping. Really, our feeling is that by switching from this existing to a much more traditional proposed, while also, if we look at the front of the house here, the portico is very poorly proportioned. We're doing something much more in keeping with the style of, this age house, actually similar to the neighbors, but different proportions. And really looking to improve stormwater management and also the aesthetics. So, our feeling is that these improvements will drastically outweigh the detriment and be a benefit to the neighborhood. So if we switch to the plans, I'll quickly walk you through existing and proposed. These were the floor area ratio calculations for Krista. You can see here in the small version, the key plan, existing one-story area that's going to get filled in on the second floor. To the plans in particular, first floor plan, again, this portion here, existing one-story. In my plans, the blue walls are new, some minor reconfiguration on the front entry hall. And the back will become a kitchen open to the family room. That's the extent of the work. Mud room that we're adding to the side, which improves a pretty unsightly condition, which we'll see on the elevations. And also you can see here, there's a Bilco door and a very strange bump out, just a bad appendage to the side of the house that we're going to be removing on the west side. Second floor, where the bulk of the work is being done, there's an existing odd narrow bedroom on the back of the house, one shared bathroom for the kids, another master bath and a very small closet. The proposed is new bedroom, which will go in the back, larger closet, slightly larger bathroom. We'd like to get a laundry room on the second floor, and then basically shifting this existing bathroom or bedroom back a bit in order to get a new bath, Jack and Jill for the kids. The third floor is already finished. It meets the code in terms of being less than 1/3 of the area of the floor below. We're proposing to make a guest bathroom and bedroom on the third floor. So very small work, just a minor dormer out the back on that. Going through the elevations, existing front, if I zoom in a little bit here, you can see a fairly poorly proportioned portico, some really bad details on that. What we're looking to do, first and foremost, remove the vinyl siding. On the historic notes or the architectural notes, I was very pleased to see a request for not textured. We never specify textured hardy, so the new hardy plank will be smooth, look much more like traditional clapboard. And then looking for just a better proportioned flat, and instead of having a very shallow roof shape to avoid this window, we're going with a flat roofed entry portico. On the side, west side elevation, not much changing here aside from this is the ugly appendage that apparently was supposed to be a chimney, didn't get built as a chimney, became a closet that extends up above the flat roof. Very unusual, so we'll be taking that off, cleaning up this side elevation, adding some detail to the sunroom on the side, some columns, and again, simplifying the portico or improving the portico. This is where the bulk of the work is being done. Again, in terms of, in our mind, of benefit outweighing the detriment. This is a fairly unsightly rear elevation. Flat roof for the majority of it. Sort of a lonely gable over here. What we're proposing is a much more symmetrical, traditional, matching the roof pitches with a double gable. small shed off the top, little back entry portico or covered roof to break up the facade, give some interest and also some protection from the rain. And then again, this thing is quite bizarre. On the west side, we have a very unusual little side entry roof, asymmetrical. We're taking that off, extending it over, converting this window to a new mudroom entrance. One thing that, go ahead.
I'm out.
Yeah.
Mr. Spur?
Yes.
What
Yep.
do you think? I think we've had a thorough explanation so far. You want to keep going?
If there's
Yeah, that's the end of it.
anything
I
that's
just
further
wanted
of
to talk
interest to the
about some
variance.
screening.
Okay, that'd be helpful to wrap this up, and then we'll open it to our board professionals. That'd be great.
Yeah, the last thing that I wanted to mention is Krista mentioned that there was not coverage calculations. It may have just been the order of the pages. Those were included in the set distributed on page 8. And I did want to note, we have some photos. The Kovarks, since they've moved in, have planted some substantial screening already in the back of the house.
Got a good report from the city forester, right?
Yep. So I think that pretty much explains it.
That's good.
Dennis, before we proceed any further, that first sheet, A9, that Mr. Kowalski referred to, that should be marked as Exhibit A2. The
Thank you.
photo sheet was Exhibit A1.
Okay, Chris, good job.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions? Let's start, Mr. Dow. Anything you want to follow up here regarding this application?
Well, I guess the question is if the applicant is willing to comply with the engineer's report, there's a question regarding calculations, which I think he touched on. The comment about the overflow out to the street, which we didn't recommend. The question regarding screening of the AC and the generator units. And I think that was probably it.
Kowalski, do you want to address those questions? Yeah.
Yeah, we're willing to comply with all of those.
Okay.
I have nothing further then.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dower. And Mr. Galvin will note that as a condition of the application. Any questions from board members of this witness?
I got that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Galvin.
I just have one question, Yuko. Ms. Kowalski, you anticipated almost all my questions, but regarding the forest report, he does comment about the location of the dry well being within the drip line of the neighbor's beech tree, and asked if that could be relocated in an effort to avoid that conflict. Is that something?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a beautiful tree, and we certainly don't want to hurt that. So we can shift the dry well north to the side of the garage.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions from the board? Hearing and seeing none. Are there any questions of members of the public? I don't know if there's anyone in attendance. Okay, seeing and hearing none. Excellent. We can shift now then to the applicants if they'd like to provide some testimony to conclude the case.
Wait a minute.
Well, go ahead, Mr. Galvin is shaking his head no. What would you like, Mr. Galvin?
Kavarks can close. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time, and we hope you look favorably on our application. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you for your good close there. All right. Before we proceed to executive session, Mr. Galvin, will you just remind us of the conditions? I have engineer's letter.
Yeah, we got 3. Let me do it, Mr. Chairman. Don't worry about it.
Thank you.
We got the applicant will comply with the board engineer's letter, and that's April 14th, 2020. The applicant will employ party board material for the facade as described by the applicant at the time of the hearing. And 3, the dry well is to be moved to preserve the beech tree on the neighbor's property.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Galvin. All right. Wonderful. Now we can proceed to our deliberations. Would anyone like to kick us off? Oh, Mr. Yuko, you're welcome to, but you got to unmute first.
Trying.
Thank you.
I really like this application. I mean, the architect noted some of the unusual, I guess that's a nice word, features of the house, which it looks like they're going to fix. The addition, I feel, is modest in contrast with what's going on in the neighborhood. The variances are, you know, they're not that significant. And in fact, you know, some of them are reductions of existing things. So I'm in favor of it.
Anything further for or against?
I second that, what Tom says. I think the applicant's improvements are modest, much needed, keeping in with the neighborhood. I think it'll be an improvement for the neighborhood. I am reading some notes that the addition will conform, to the existing neighborhood, and that there will be no contemplation of a second dwelling here, and that the conditions, there shall be explicitly no creation of a second residential unit. Maybe that should be noted in this application here. Other than that, the stormwater management has been covered, and I really have nothing else to say, no objections to it. I think it'll be a very nice project.
Thank you, Mr. Lardieri. Anyone else want to add anything before we move to a motion? All right. Hearing and seeing none, we'll entertain a motion regarding the application.
I move to approve the application.
Thank you, Mr. Yuko. Do we have a second?
Second, Michael Lardieri.
Mr. Lardieri. All right, Chris, do us the honors.
Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Laderi,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Ms. Schwartzstein,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes. I agree.
Chairman Spur.
Yes. All right. Congratulations. Good luck with the project.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now we will move to 47 Lenox Road, Kurt and Jessica Lemkow.
Right, Mr. Chairman, for the record, it's Bartholomew A. Sheehan Jr. of the firm of Dempsey, Dempsey and Sheehan, appearing for the applicants. Before we begin, may I please call the roll of the witnesses who are available for this application to make sure they're on board, Mr. Chairman.
You may.
Chris Lemkow. Are you there?
Chris Lemkow is my sister. I am Chip Lemkow. This is my wife, Jessica.
Hi.
All right. Okay. Mr. Kowalski, I know, is here from the prior hearing.
Yes.
And Mr. Hollows, William Hollows.
I am here.
And Jared Kesk as a resource witness for landscaping.
I am here as well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And are there any members of the interested public who have logged in with interest in this application? Hearing none. The application seeks modifications to the improvement and the existing property to slightly increase the kitchen size, to incorporate the existing stoop porch and steps to create a new mudroom entranceway, to construct an addition to the second floor to accommodate a guest bedroom and the relocation of master bedroom closets, and to reconfigure and expand the rear yard terrace. The variances required are modest, given the fact that the lot itself at 20,064 square feet is undersized in the zone where 25,000 square feet is required. The specific variance relief that is requested from the dimensional standards is one, a relief from the lot coverage standard where 30% is required, 30.7 is existing, and 31.9% is proposed, represents a de minimis increase of 298 square feet net. The second variance is for building coverage, where 14% is permitted, 19.3% exists, and 20.9% is proposed. This variance relates to the terrace, which, because of the natural grade of the property, is raised over 1 foot and thereby is included in building coverage. If the lot was flat and there was no grade, it would not be included, and the excess coverage for the building would be less than 1%, or 14.9%, translates into 179 square feet. The rear yard setback is required to be 45 feet. It currently is 39.0 feet. It is proposed to be increased so that the rear yard setback would be 35.9 feet. This also represents an increase in the rear yard of 3.9 feet for the proposed terrace. The house has a rear yard setback of 61.8 feet. It is also worth noting that the existing front yard setback is 85.85 feet, where 35 is required. If the terrace was not elevated because of the grade, the rear yard would comply. The proposal advances and promotes the purposes of zoning without substantial negative impact to the public good and without substantial detriment to the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance and master plan of the city of Summit. As I said before, there are 3 proposed witnesses, Mr. Lemkow, Mr. Hollows, the civil engineer, and Mr. Kowalski, the architect. I would propose to begin with Mr. Lemkow in the absence of any questions from the board.
I have a question, Mr. Sheehan.
Sir.
In Krista's letter, this is Dennis Galvin. In Krista's letter, she talks about the shed and moving it to a conforming location. Can you do that?
Yes, as a condition of approval.
Sure, please proceed.
All right, would ask that Chip Lemkow, Kurt W. Lemkow, be given sworn in for the purposes of testifying in this matter.
Thank you, Chip. Keep your hand up. Do you swear or affirm testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
State your full name for the records by your last name.
Official name is Kurt William Lemkaw Jr. Last name is L-E-M as in Mary, K-A-U.
And what do they call you?
Chip.
All right, Chip. All right. You may proceed.
All right, Mr. Lemkow, are you the owner of the real estate at 47 Lenox Road, Summit, New Jersey?
Yes, I am.
Is it true that you acquired this property in December of 2011?
That's correct.
After living in the property, have you determined that certain changes to the site are required to bring the house into the current custom and vogue of the area in which the house is located?
Yes.
What's proposed by the application?
Well, first and foremost, we want to expand and modernize the existing kitchen, which in its present form is a little tight. Second, and frankly, the main thing that launched this whole endeavor was a mudroom. We don't have one and we really need one. Third, we want to create space above the space that we're enveloping into the kitchen to add an additional bedroom on the second floor, as well as increase the size of the master bedroom. And then lastly, we want to improve the existing terrace and expand it a little bit.
Is it fair to say that the additional square footage that you're proposing of floor area for the entire structure is 411.41 square feet?
That's correct.
Can you describe for the record the landscaping of the side and rear yards that currently exists?
Yeah, so the up until very recently, there was pretty substantial screening on the side and rear yards. The side screening still exists. It's very significant. The rear screening has been I guess, altered by our neighbor to the back, where they've done sort of significant tree removal, and they're in the middle of a project. Their house is on Whitridge, but it backs up to our house. Our expectation in having a conversation with some of their landscapers are that they are going to add screening such that the two houses will be sufficiently screened. To the extent that doesn't happen, we'll collaborate with them and find a solution.
This is notwithstanding the fact that the forester in his review indicated that the area was on all perimeters well screened. It must have been before they began their project.
That's correct.
All right, describe the condition of the existing terrace for the record.
It's a stone terrace that I would say is slowly kind of falling apart. So structurally, I wouldn't say it's in good shape right now.
Right, is the proposed terrace an increase in size over the existing terrace by 334 square feet?
That's correct.
And what are the amenities that are going to be proposed there?
We're going to add a grill, some outdoor spa facilities, and a pergola.
And are those consistent with your observation of amenities that are found in the area that the house is located in?
Yes.
Right, notwithstanding the increased size of the redesigned terrace, is it true that it will affect an increase in the existing non-conforming rear yard by 3.1 feet?
Yes.
And finally, can you address the issue of access to the space in the basement designated as a bedroom as referenced in the zoning officer's review?
Yeah, so that was a bedroom when we bought the house. We apologize. We didn't realize that it did not conform to code. Our intent is to keep it as a bedroom. So to the extent that we need to make adjustments such that it does conform to code, we will do so.
All right, a couple of final quick ones. You heard me agree to a condition of approval to move the shed to a conforming area. Is that accurate?
That's, yeah, again, I mean, the shed, look, if we need to remove it, we will. If we need to move it, we will. It was there when we got there. So yes, if, to the extent that it doesn't conform to code, we will make sure it does.
The engineer asks whether or not it's true that no trees will be removed.
No trees will be removed.
Can you comply with the construction official's fire code requirements as stated?
Yes.
Right, and how do you feel about the Environmental Commission's request that you consider pervious pavers in the driveway?
I think we discussed this. I think it certainly will consider anything, but that's unlikely.
All right, I have no further questions of this witness. Would submit him to the examination of the board and members of the interested public.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sheehan, for your thorough questioning. I'll offer Mr. Dower, if you have any questions, understanding that there are further witnesses still to come, and this is the applicant.
I'm going to talk
Yes,
to the
Mr.
engineer.
Galvin. 1 second, Mr. Dower. Yes, Mr. Galvin.
The tail end of that answer to the last question just like kind of threw me.
You'd like it clear?
Some kind of impervious pavers and the applicant's refusing?
The applicant is not refusing to consider it. He's being truthful, saying that when he considers it, it is unlikely that it can be realistically employed because of the difficulty resulting from the stone pavers as opposed to the black driveway, which currently exists.
Okay.
All right.
Go ahead, guys.
Okay, sorry, Mr. Dower, please continue.
If the engineer is going to present testimony, I'll just hold off until that point.
Okay,
All
thank
right,
you.
let's bring Bill Hollows up.
We just want to offer the board members any opportunity to ask questions. One moment, Mr. Sheehan. Any questions from the board members of the applicant?
Yeah, I just have one question. The applicant did address the issue of the basement egress window, just to make sure we capture that as a condition.
Certainly.
Yeah, Mr. Galvin acknowledged, right, that would be noted as a condition.
Excuse me?
What was that, please?
No, the applicant had testified in response to the question, Mr. Sheehan, that they would make their basement bedroom fully compliant, which meant the addition of an egress window. I would just like to add it as a condition.
That's acceptable to the applicant.
Technically, they'd have to do that anyway, but okay.
All right, if it's not necessary, if it's not necessary, then I'll leave that.
What I'm saying is you can't have a bedroom that doesn't have an adequate escape window. So they have to do that by the construction code.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Sheen, you may proceed with your next witness.
Would ask that the testimony of Bill Hollows be taken in this matter and that he be sworn for that purpose.
Bill, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Say your full name for the record, spell your last name.
William Hollows, Hollows.
Mr. Chair, accept Mr. Hollows' credentials, having appeared before us on many occasions.
We do. Welcome back, Mr. Hollows.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Hollows, you prepared the plans that have been filed in connection with this application, consisting of 2 sheets with your original date of January 3rd, 2020.
That's correct.
Could you take us through the plan, please?
Well, we'll start the subject property.
Now, Bill, excuse me a second. Would you like Chris, Nicola, the secretary, to share the screen and put your plan on it as you testify?
That's probably a good idea.
Okay,
Mr. Nicola, could you do that?
Yeah, hold on.
And you've made no changes in that plan or colored it up or anything, right, Mr. Hollows?
No, I have not.
All right, so it doesn't have to be marked. All right, the plan is up there, Mr. Hollows. Up, it's moving around.
Chris,
There we go.
yeah, that's good.
Good.
The subject property is 47 Lenox Road. It fits between Prospect Hill Avenue and Whitridge Road. It contains 20,064 square feet. It's 100 by approximately 200 feet deep. It is improved with a 2-story frame dwelling, a paved drive, a slate terrace, and a shed in the northeast corner, right in the northeast corner. The property slopes from basically Lenox Road to the rear of the property. It has a 6-foot fall in that span. Along the property line, there is some steep slopes. It is not in an area that we're proposing to do any improvements or land disturbance at all. You can see from my drawing, we have the proposed, to the rear of the house is a proposed terrace. That seems to cause the problems as far as building coverage and variances that are required for rear yard setback and overall building coverage. It consists of a pergola, a spa area, and kind of an open area. And the shaded areas that you see on the drawing are proposed additions to the home. You just kind of fill in a few areas. And what we're proposing to do, we don't, technically we're allowed 30% coverage. Presently it's 30.7 of, I'm sorry, lot coverage is allowed 30%. We're existing is at 30.7. We're going to 31.9. What we're proposing to do is take a little better than 2%. The area that's over 30%, we're going to capture that from the roof. That's that hatched area that you see behind the pergola. And we're going to pipe that into a dry well. The dry well size comes out to 6-foot diameter, 4 feet deep, in a 10 by 10 trench, which more than accounts for the approximately 440 square feet of the 2% over the allowable 30%. That's how we're going to handle the stormwater management, and it will actually, there would be no increase to any of the neighbors with this proposed system. I can agree there are no trees that would come down with this project, and the steep slopes that are to the rear of the property will not be disturbed. The silt fence will be set up prior to or before it gets to that steep slope area in the back.
Right now, Mr. Hollows, in your testimony, you have addressed the steep slope issue referenced in the engineer's review at paragraph 3. You have addressed the stormwater management plan contained in observations of the city engineer's review letter, paragraphs number 6 and number 7. I ask you whether or not you will accept as a condition of approval the preparation of a grading plan as deemed necessary by the Department of Community Services.
Yeah, that's the general process when the approval, if we do, the board grants this approval to go for a building permit, it would be a grading plan, basically using this plan and including any items that the board may require us this evening to be put onto that plan, in addition to any comments that Mr. Dewar had included in his letter, which is something that's, I would say, it's a 2020 requirement that dry wells come to the surface with a manhole. So we would revise the detail for that.
All right, and final question. The grade change on the lot necessitates the raising of the terrace. Is that correct?
Yeah, that'd be one way to look at it, certainly, yes. The only other way to do it would be to have a lot of steps coming out of the house, and that just really doesn't have the house flow to the outdoor living area.
And if the terrace as proposed was on level ground, it would not be included in building coverage, correct?
That's correct.
And it would not be included in the rear yard setback incursion, correct?
That's correct. And the house as it sits there does not violate the rear yard setback.
Right, and Mr. Hollows, is it fair to say that from an engineering perspective, the front yard setback is substantially greater than the front yard setback required at 35 feet?
Yeah, it's more than double.
I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman. Submit them to the examination of the board.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. Mr. Dower, any follow-up questions for Mr. Hollows?
I believe he's addressed everything in the letter, so just making the letter a condition of the resolution would be fine.
That's acceptable to the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. Any questions from members of the board?
Yes, I have some questions. First question regarding the steep slopes. I'm looking at the grading. It doesn't look like a real steep slopes in here. Just at the end, in the rear end of the property. Is that a steep slope?
Between the 2-foot contours, it's greater than 15%.
In which part here?
It's hatched. It's on my drawing. It's hatched.
Just a hatched place, yeah.
Just that hatched area adjacent to the rear property line.
Okay. Second question is regarding that rear offset, the 39. This is like 6 foot in between. So 6 foot is the variance, right? You're requesting, the applicant is asking for a 6 foot variance for the setback between 45 and 39. Correct me if I'm wrong, right?
No,
I'd like to know what is the hardship that we should consider before approving this variance?
Yeah, Mr. Malay, the setback is proposed at 30, bear with me a second, at 35.9 feet. The actual existing non-conforming setback is 39 feet. So the setback is being reduced. The setback variance non-conformity is being reduced by 3.9 feet.
That's not what I read in Krista's letter.
No, I think as I read it, she indicates that the rear
The
yard
third point-
setback proposed, well, she is not reading the plan accurately. You're reading her letter accurately, but the actual setback as it currently exists is 39 feet. The proposed setback, and Mr. Hollows can correct me if I'm wrong, is 35.9 feet. So it increases the rear yard setback.
Actually, it decreases the rear yard setback. But what's happening here is that the patio itself or the terrace itself is at 39 feet. That extra 3.5 feet or so is a planter that runs along the rear of this terrace area.
So, Mr. Sheehan or Mr. Hollows, how should the variance read, or can you simplify this for us if there is some ambiguity or, God forbid, an error on the part of Ms. Anderson?
Bill, for the record, describe the existing rear yard on your plan and the proposed rear yard.
The rear yard, the existing rear yard that we have, it's kind of a circular terrace. It's hard to see on my drawing. It's a dashed line. It comes out to 35.9 feet. The proposed terrace itself is at 39 feet. The planter is at approximately 35 feet. Very similar to the 35.9 feet. So you got a planting area to kind of screen the terrace a little bit from the neighbors.
But that planting area is not technically a part of the intrusive terrace, is it?
No, I would say not. Again, it's something for aesthetics.
And doesn't Krista's report says the rear yard setback?
Mr. Upton, can you keep your head up when you speak? Because when you look down, your voice lowers.
Sorry. Krista's report does say that the rear yard setback proposed is 39 feet. So isn't that accurate? Isn't that the accurate number?
Krista says that it's 39.
Isn't that what Mr. Hollows just said?
Yeah, Mr. Yuko, what it is it's 39 to the terrace itself. It's 35 plus or minus to the planter area that is adjacent to the terrace.
So
and the planter area is not contemplated as being in violation of the rear yard setback requirement, so that the existing the rear yard setback proposed is 39 feet, which increases it from the existing 35.9, 35.9, right?
Correct.
Right. So we're just to be clear, right? It's 39 to the terrace, and the additional few feet we're talking about is the planter, which you're testifying should not be calculated with respect to that setback.
Yeah, it's not useful space as far as the terrace. You're not going to set a chair there or anything. It's it's for aesthetics.
It's not occupiable space.
Correct.
It's not impervious space.
Correct.
Impervious surface.
So for purposes of the variance we may grant, if we grant this variance, it would be for 39 feet?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I guess the point that we're trying to emphasize is that this proposed plan reduces the existing nonconformity.
Okay.
Correct, Bill,
That's great.
for the record?
Correct. That's correct.
Okay,
Thank you for clarifying. We're just going to pause for just one moment here, Mr. Sheehan. Mr. Galvin seems to have gone quiet, which is atypical. We just want to make sure he's joining us here. Are you with us, Mr. Galvin?
Yes, I am.
All right. Thank you. Sorry, we missed you there.
I'm
All
just
right.
listening very quietly.
All right. Thank you. Sorry.
So
All right.
if there is if there is a decrease in the setback, why is it included in the variance as item 3?
Because it still does not reach the 45 feet required. And the hardship is that the existing non-conforming rear yard, Mr. Millay, is a product of the setback at 85 feet from the front yard. It drives the development into the rear yard. What this proposed plan is it increases the setback to 39 feet from the 35.1 feet. So it's improving it.
Okay, let's compare the two setbacks. The non-conforming setback now, or the existing, is completely different nature and use than the proposed one, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. It's not the same. It's not the same, maybe the same purpose, but not the same nature and not the same structural properties, right?
If you're saying, does the new terrace propose different amenities than the old terrace? The answer, yes, you are right.
So there is a variance here needed for that purpose also. And my question, let me go back to my question. What is the dire need and what are the hardships that prevents us from staying with the code? That's my question. I'd like to see.
Yeah, the unusual existing condition of the property created by the excessive front yard setback is something that has created the existing nonconformity. The proposed nonconformity reduces the existing conformity and will be shielded from all view off-site by natural screening. The natural screening existed prior to the rear yard neighbors project beginning. And when the rear yard neighbors project is finished, between the rear yard neighbor and Mr. Lemkow and Mrs. Lemkow, that privacy screening will be recreated so that the improvement proposed by the Lemkows will not be visible from the side or the rear of the property.
Let's ask the question, can we ask the question this way? If you respect the 45-foot setback, would that leave you with a usable terrace, or what would the dimension of the terrace be? I imagine it wouldn't be very deep. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
And just say it a different way. I mean, they'll have a smaller variance. If we approve this, they'll have a smaller variance than they have now. So what they're proposing is an improvement. It's less of a variance than exists now.
That's correct.
Right. So the apex right now is at 35 feet from the property line. The new terrace, edge of terrace, is 39 feet. Not to 45, but it's headed in the right direction. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Any other questions from board members? All right. Hearing none, we'll check one more time here, Mr. Sheehan, if there's any neighbors or anyone else from the public in attendance, but I don't see any, so I think we're good there. You'd like to move to a third witness, Mr. Sheehan, or?
Yes, I have the architect, Mr. Kowalski, and if Mr. Kowalski can take us through the improvements proposed based on the plans that have been electronically filed with Mr. Nicola. That will be the end of the direct testimony of the witness.
Dave, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Mr. Chairman, accept Mr. Kowalski's credentials.
Long time no see. Welcome back, Mr. Kowalski.
All right.
Please
Thank
proceed.
you. Chris, could we share my screen again? Okay, gonna go quicker through the plans this time. This is existing and proposed basement. No change in the extents of the floor plan. I'm sorry, here we are. We're gonna deepen it, but no impact on the variance. Here again, we have some unusual conditions. We'll get to the photos at the end, but very similar to the previous application. There's a sort of a 1.5 story infill currently on the south side of the building. We're proposing to fill that in and go up. Bear with me. On the first floor, again, little alcove here. We're going to fill that in. It's very unsightly on the outside, basically just square house. There's a very asymmetrical back elevation that we'll get to by creating this little bump out. We're going to create a symmetrical back facade, which I think will improve the look from the neighbors in the rear. Tiny modification on the side, again, similar to the previous application to get a mudroom, and you can see the kitchen, which is currently here, moves here. Again, bulk of the work is on the second floor. We're filling in over the 1-story space, new closet, and a small, office / guest bedroom on the second floor. Front of the house, staying as is. We're just showing it with some shadows there. Bulk of the work is on the back. You can see here this very unusual. It's an addition to start with, not exactly in keeping with the house. Strange little alcove here. We're proposing to extend the existing roof line to a new center on this bay, bring it down, make a symmetrical, much more aesthetically appealing back elevation. Side, not much change. There's an existing shed here, so that really stays. What you do have is a slightly taller ridge line that still meets the height ordinance. From the side yard, again, a slight, unusual low extended asymmetrical slope here. We're cutting that off to make it a more symmetrical gable, and then shed dormer on the side for the bedroom. If it's okay with the board, I would like to introduce a perspective that we didn't include in the previous correspondence.
Now, this will have to be marked, and that would be marked, Mr. Nicola, A1.
Well, A1 was actually the photo sheet that Mr. Kowalski prepared as well, so I would mark this A2.
All right, thank you.
So again, just to give in 3D, it's always a little bit easier to read an idea of what the new, more symmetrical facade will look like. And then the final photo sheet, some very large homes in the neighborhood, which you can see here, going up and down the street in both directions. On the bottom here, existing rear yard, you can see the asymmetrical facade that we're going to be squaring, well, not squaring off, but extending the roof line and, in our opinion, improvement to the backyard elevation. And that's it.
All right, I have no further questions of the witness and would submit them to the examination of the board.
Mr. Dower, any questions for the architect?
None, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Questions of the board for the architect?
What is the cladding for the proposed addition and changes to the side and rear of the building, that's going to match the existing on the front?
It will. It's natural cedar. It will match.
Okay. Any further questions for the architect? All right, hearing and seeing none. Any questions from the public? Again, it doesn't look like anyone's joined. Mr. Sheehan, would you care to proceed to your next witness, or?
In the absence of any questions that the board might have with respect to the landscape plan or the terrace plan proposed by Jared Kest, I have no further witnesses, but Mr. Kest is logged in and available to respond to any questions, should there be any.
Pause for just a moment. Were there any questions regarding landscaping? Would we like to hear testimony from Mr. Kest? A question to the board. Hearing, seeing no interest. Thank you, Mr. Sheehan, for bringing Mr. Kest along with us tonight.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, the improvements proposed by this application advance the purposes of zoning in that the proposal creates an enhancement to an existing established permitted use, the advancement of the general welfare, the provisions of sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of residential uses, and brings the property into the current custom and vogue of the neighborhood as approved by Seacone versus Franklin Lakes, 223 New Jersey Super 199, appellate division case of 1988. And the proposal, while improving on the rear yard setback, does not completely comply with the rear yard setback. The stormwater drainage will be appropriately managed. The proposal is consistent with the character of homes in the neighborhood. The improvements will be aesthetically pleasing. Property values will be unaffected, and the use is permitted in the district in which it is located. I would submit the application to the board's review and deliberations, requesting an approval of the plans as submitted. And I thank the board for its patience and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. We'll note also that there appears to be no members of the interested public to provide their own comments. So we will open this case for board deliberations. Mr. Galvin, will you begin with first reciting the conditions of the application?
Ready. 1, engineer's letter of April 14th, and that covers a wide range of things that we've been talking about. 2, the shed is to be moved to a conforming location. And 3, the garage is to match the existing principal structure. Anyone disagree with that?
No, and then we'll just note Mr. Yuko's earlier comments about the code compliant egress is covered under the construction officials review.
Yeah,
Doesn't
here's
need to
the
be
thing.
called
When
out.
you have a habitation in the basement, they're under the construction code. There has to be adequate size windows to allow for escape. That's like under the construction code. So we don't really need to, Tom's noting that as like awesome, but we don't really need to deal with that. That's the construction code.
Okay, great. Thanks for the clarification. All right. Who would care to kick off the deliberations from the board? Mr. Yuko did the honors last time. Ms. Newell?
I think it's a modest addition to their home, and it's in the back of the house and will conform with all the other properties. So I would approve this application.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board?
I would say like the Linden project, Mr. Kowalski's done a great job of cleaning up the massing, scaling it appropriately. The detailing is great. I think it's going to be a nice fit when you could actually see it. I mean, it is in the backyard, but he's still taking great care with the design. So I think it's a yes in my mind.
Thank you, Mr. Lickitz.
Hey, Mr. Kowalski, you did okay.
Thank you.
All right, any further comment from the board? Pro or con? All right, thank you both for your deliberations. With that, we'll accept a motion with regard to the application.
Motion to approve.
All right, motion for Ms. Newell. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second for Mr. Mullen. All right, Chris.
Ms. Knoll,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Laderi,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Ms. Kowalski,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
No.
and Chairman Spur.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Lemcows. Thank you, Mr. Sheehan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
You're welcome. Mr. Galvin, would you like to take a 5-minute recess? Is that what you're asking for?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Let's do it. Let's take a little pit stop here, 5 minutes, and we'll be right back. Thank you,
Mr. Chair-
everyone.
Mr. Chairman, it's Chris Dewar. I just wanted, my firm did not review the next application. Do you still want me to be on this call or not?
Let me look at that one real quick. I don't think we need you, Mr. Stradauer. We can call it an early night.
Okay. Thank you very much. Have a good
Thank
night.
you. Thank you very much.
He said no.
Liz, do you like my ships?
I love the ships. We should be on the
That
ship.
picture.
Where is that?
Cape May.
Oh, beautiful.
That's where they have that great lobster place there, the Lobster House. It's
Yeah,
like-
I was there a month ago.
What's that? Yeah.
Yep. One
Good.
of my friends just moved to Cape May.
Cape
Yeah.
May is awesome. It's
Yeah.
quiet, but I love it.
You make it to the brewery?
Oh, yeah, I did. I went to like 2 breweries and 2 wineries or something like that. So I didn't get to the distillery.
Yeah.
That's a full weekend there. Wow. All right, let's see if we can get Mr. Lardieri back and then we can kick off. So, Mr. Wood gets to.
There's Scott.
Welcome back, Scott.
Let me text him.
Okay.
So when I was in Cape May, we went to someone's house and they social distanced everybody. So there was a bunch of 2 seats, 2 seats, 2 seats, and this woman read who's Tom Sawyer, the guy, Clemens, I always forget his name.
Mark Twain.
Mark Twain.
Samuel.
So she read a short story from Mark Twain. It's called Eve. And the woman who did it did such a wonderful job. It was so nice. So we got cheated out of going to a play down there, but we picked up, this was a bonus that we got to see somebody do that reading, and she did it so well. It was like, oh, it was very good. Mark Twain is a special guy, you know. He actually wrote the he helped General Grant write his biography before he died, so his wife would have money.
Very nice.
Yes. And you know, General Grant lived in Burlington, New Jersey. And on the night that Lincoln was assassinated, Grant said, I can't go tonight. My wife doesn't really want to go with your wife, so I'm going to go home. So he was in Burlington when Lincoln got shot.
Wise move.
Yeah, or he would have been the other person shot. You got to do what your wife tells you. That's the answer.
Try safer that way.
It turned out for Grant to be safer.
There you go. All right.
Any word from Mr. Lardieri, Liz? Or we're actually at 7, Dennis. Should we just kick it?
Let's move.
All right, Miss Alfonso, thank you for your patience. If you'd like to kick us off with Parisi Builders and Associates, 17 Elm Place.
Thank you. Good evening again, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Samantha Alfonso of Dempsey and Sheehan on behalf of Parisi Builders and Associates LLC through its managing member, Wayne Parisi. Mr. Parisi.
Oh, Mr. Laderi's here. Everyone, hold on. Just stop for a second.
Hello?
Michael, hook in for a second. Tell us you're here. You're on mute. Attaboy.
I'm here. How am I looking?
Looking good.
All right, that's all I want to know. Can I go back to mute now?
Yeah, you can mute now.
All right, thank you, Miss Alfonso. Please proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Parisi is requesting permission of the board to complete the construction of the new home at 17 Elm Place with a new driveway within the 2-foot setback required for driveways and a garage at 5 feet from the property line where 8 feet is required. The property itself slopes down from the street with an elevation of 87 feet at the top of the driveway and approximately 101 feet at the garage. The lot is fairly narrow and very deep at approximately 190 feet deep. The previously existing driveway also deviated from the standard, but it was destroyed during construction. As a result, the non-conforming protection was eliminated. The proposal calls for the replacement of the driveway in the same location, about 8 inches from the lot line rather than the 2 feet required. This allows for the driveway to be about 16 more inches relative to the house, which may not sound like much, but as Mr. Parisi put it, it'll be worth it to the homeowner. This additional space will definitely benefit the eventual homeowner's occupancy by providing adequate space for standard personal vehicles and easier maneuverability. The applicant is also requesting an interpretation of the zoning ordinance and in the alternative, a variance for the location of the garage as constructed. The garage was constructed pursuant to an erroneously issued permit. We understand that this is, the city is not withdrawing the permit. And we understand that this is because of the way that the ordinance reads. The garage is not within the 30-foot required rear yard setback. It's actually up closer towards the house. It makes more sense to have the garage in this location away from the rear yard neighbor. It allows for less impervious coverage and provides more of a usable rear yard for the eventual homeowner. Due to the topography of the site as it slopes down, the narrow, deep nature of the lot, as well as the fact that the benefits discussed will substantially outweigh any detriment, the board may approve this application with variances. Mr. Parisi has discussed this proposal with the next door neighbor most affected by this driveway, as well as the garage. They have come to a verbal agreement, which may be put to writing. At this point, it's not in writing, only because Wayne wants to provide the type of landscaping that the neighbor wants and desires. And he's going to put that landscaping on the neighboring property for him to buffer his property.
What are you talking about, Sam?
It is Wayne there?
It'll be
Wayne,
on lot 20, Sam.
Yeah, thank you. His name is escaping me.
He's in the meeting, but I don't see him on the screen.
Okay, but it's not Scott, right?
Mr. Carpenter.
Carpinelli, thank you. Thank you, Kathy. Yes. So Mr. Carpinelli and Wayne have been discussing this for quite some time. And Wayne just wants to make sure that he puts the type of landscaping that the neighbor wants. So they have been discussing that, and he is going to do the landscaping on Mr. Carpinelli's property.
So what's the street address?
It is 15 Elm Place.
So landscaping on 15 Elm Place is to be established as agreed to between the parties.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Parisi also had a chance to review a stormwater question raised by a rear property neighbor. Although his current stormwater management plan provides for 2 significant dry well systems, and it provides more than enough storage and appropriate management of the water, he has decided to go ahead and add another additional dry well to make sure that he manages even more water than necessary.
All right, so the applicant shall provide 2 dry wells?
3 in total.
3 dry wells to be reviewed and approved by the board's engineer.
Yes.
That review was actually done by Lori Toth from the city, Dennis.
It's already, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's okay. I think we need to say it, and if it's been already approved, then that's great, but
This is actually a third dry well that Lori has not had a chance to review yet. It's something that has come up based on an understanding that the rear yard property neighbor had some questions on the stormwater and has had some issues with stormwater on his property.
what
So
would
we
you
want to go ahead and,
describe that.
I'm sorry?
How would you just, I have the applicant shall provide 3 dry wells to be reviewed and approved by the board engineer to show that there will be no drainage impact on the rear property?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
With that, I would ask Wayne Parisi to be sworn in to give testimony in this matter.
Wayne, you gotta come off mute. Do you swear affirm test? You're on mute. You gotta come off mute.
All right, tap to speak.
Okay, do you swear affirm testimony? Do you swear affirm testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
All right, state your full name for the record, spell your last name.
Wayne Parisi, P as in Peter, A-R-I-S-I.
Great name. Go ahead. Tell us what you gotta tell us.
Well, all I have to say is we've had a major drainage problem with the neighbor in the rear. The reason being, Lori came out the next day and our curb cut, we ripped out the curbing where the driveway is proposed and where it was. And what happened is we were getting the water from the whole neighborhood down our driveway. So it caused a ton of water to go into the neighbor's property. We didn't expect that kind of rainfall, and we didn't realize the water would travel that path. But it did, and we flooded out the neighbor pretty good. And we're here to address it, along with the variance we request.
Thank you. Wayne, and that was probably around when the Isaiah storm came, around August 4th, probably, or one of those other big storms that happened in the last month or so.
Yes.
And can you just remind the board, Wayne, how long you've been building in this area?
33, this area, 20 years, 33 in total.
It's not relevant. Sorry.
That's okay.
But
if you want to know about the landscaping, I'm in touch with the 2 neighbors, on adjacent neighbors constantly. The gentleman to the left, his retaining wall was about 4 inches onto our property. So we rebuilt it for him, and he's very pleased. And the neighbor to the right, whose name is Nick, at 15 Elm Place, the old curbing was on the property line. It got destroyed. It was old. It really needed to be replaced. And I worked out with Nick what we're going to do, because A, we're going to replace the curb, and B, he had some trees that were way over our property. And if we had just trimmed them, the trees would have been like, very unappealing. So we removed a couple cedars that were hanging over, and we made a deal to replace the cedars with 3 16-foot high arborvitae, green giants, they call them. His retaining walls in need of repair. There's some small retaining walls on the side yard. We're going to repair those for him for nothing, and we're going to put some more planting and clean that up, because we want to make it look aesthetically pleasing for whoever purchased the home as well. So it's a benefit for both the adjacent neighbor Nick at 15 and for us.
all right, sounds good. Let's move on.
Okay, thank you. And Wayne, you'll agree to the comments made by the board's professionals, subject to your experts' comments?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to explain one thing, because when I read it, it didn't sound good. We removed the shade tree in the front of the home. It's in John Linson's report. But someone from the Shade Tree Authority came out months ago And I explained to them that we're going to have to replace this tree. It's not going to make it with all the construction and removing the curb and sidewalk, which we did and put all new in. And she had sent some emails out. I'm not sure who, but she copied me on if they could use the tree anywhere else because I was going to replace it. I didn't just go remove it on my own behalf. It was planned out. And they didn't find a spot for it, so we removed it and we're going to replace it whatever John Linson wants as a shade tree.
Thank you. Okay, if I can, if anybody has questions for Wayne at this time.
Any questions of this witness from the board? Or actually, Mr. Galvin, rather from the public, I suppose, first.
I think, listen, the way that we always, you should stay consistent.
Mm-hmm.
You should always ask the board first. If the board doesn't have any questions, then we move on to the public.
Okay. Any questions from board members then? Mr. Mullen, I see you there. Edge of your seat.
I just wanted to hear from Mr. Parisi more about those water issues that occurred on the neighbor to the rear's property.
Well, there was two issues. One, we have a detached garage in the rear of the property, and months ago, when we dug the detached garage, every time it rained, it would fill up. All the water would go straight down that driveway. So we had somebody pump it out, and when I got there, they were pumping onto the neighbor's property. I don't think it was more than 2 minutes. And that was the first issue we had with the neighbor. So, of course, they stopped immediately. And the other water issues, we took the water from the whole neighborhood and pushed it down our driveway. I mean, it moves stone. Water does a lot. So because we took the whole, normally that's not going to happen. We have curbing in now with a lip on it, and we built up the driveway as Lori suggested, so the water doesn't enter our property from that whole street. We took the whole street of water down our driveway, and it flooded the backyard. It ran to the lowest point, which is the neighbor in the rear. So we don't think that's going to be a problem. We know it's not going to be a problem in the future. And the engineer can testify more about the sheet flow and how she designed the system, but it was greatly exasperated when we had that storm.
Mr. Galvin, oh, sorry, Ms. Alfonso. Mr. Galvin, with respect to that condition for the third dry well, does it include also retention of drainage jurisdiction for the board?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Sorry, Ms. Alfonso, please.
That's okay. Thank you. Wayne, in your experience, generally when you're doing construction, sometimes the water will fill up more than when you have the grass in and you're completed construction, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
I mean, nothing's absorbed right now. Right. Basically, it's running over dirt and driveway, nothing at all. And with the extra, we took in so much water from neighbors and the street that it wasn't a true evaluation of the water flow.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from members of the board?
Yes, I'd like to know these three dry wells going to be connected or not connected?
Yeah, they're connected to each other. They're actually, the lot slopes to the rear, so the first one's the highest, the second one's a little lower, and the third one's a little lower. So it gives a chance for each of them. The first one, if it absorbs it all, won't hit the second and third. Whatever doesn't absorb will go to second. Whatever the second doesn't absorb will go to the third. So I don't think we can do much more than that. We're over designed on it.
Thanks.
Okay, any further questions from the board before we defer to any members of the public who would like to ask just questions of this witness? Mr. Schnipper, are you a member of the public interested in asking a question of this witness?
Yes, I am. Thank you. I am the neighboring lot owner. I own lot number 7 on the same block, 4604 as.
And just for the record, Mr. Schnipper, sorry, Mr. Schnipper, would you mind just stating your name again?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Your last name. Thank you.
Yes, it's Scott, S-C-O-T-T. Last name is Schnipper, S-C-H-N as in Nancy, I-double-P as in Peter, E-R.
Thank you. And your address again, Mr. Schnipper, sorry.
134 Maple Street.
All right, thank you. Please proceed. Just with questions at this time, if you don't mind.
My question is, has the third well been installed yet? And does any type of testing have to be done prior to your completion of the property in connection with the flow of water?
Well, the testing has been done. The engineer can testify to that. We did the perk tests and whatever required tests there were. And she'll have to testify to that. And I do apologize. I first time I saw your pictures was today. We really flooded you out.
Yeah, on more than one occasion, and that was not Isaiah's, by the way. And what concerns me is that the volume of water is greater since the prior home was raised at the end of 2019. The volume of water has been greater ever since then, not during cataclysmic thunderstorms, not during tropical storms, but on other more.
Yes, one moment, Mr. Schnipper. Just Ms. Alfonso, you'll confirm the engineer will be testifying so we can verify some of the facts behind this. Sorry to cut you off, Mr. Schnipper. We'll give you an opportunity to ask a question of the engineer as well, just so we can resolve some of those more technical.
I'm just concerned. So I understand that the developer is now promising the board that there'll be a third dry well installed that will rectify my flooding issues. But I'm concerned about enforcement and compliance after the developer has sold the property. So I want to make sure before title is handed over to another owner that I have no more flooding issues, because the volume of water onto my property has been much greater since the demolition of the prior home.
Mr. Galvin, before you get too relaxed back there, can you just clarify for Mr. Schnipper's benefit, when we say retaining drainage jurisdiction, what does that mean?
Well, first of all, it's kind of unusual to have 3 dry wells. And I'm sorry that we released our engineer in this particular case. I think we should have kept Chris, maybe. We're going to make sure that there's a basic standard in New Jersey that this applicant has to meet, and all applicants have to meet, which is that post-development runoff cannot exceed pre-development runoff. So the first question is, what was the amount of runoff before any changes were made to this lot? And they're not allowed to be greater than what it was before. So if they are greater, the burden's on Wayne to make sure that he fixes that problem. Now he realizes that he's stepping up and he's saying, look, I had proposed 2 dry wells. Now I'm going to provide a 3rd dry well. We have to get the city engineer to confirm that the plan will work. And what we're going to do to back that up is we're going to retain drainage jurisdiction for 2 years. So regardless of who owns this lot, if it's excessive, then you're going to be able to complain to us and we're going to take this back up. Okay, so we need to solve this problem, and we need to solve this problem now, but we're not going to solve it in this conversation on the Zoom meeting tonight, because I'm not an engineer. So we need engineering to determine what will happen. And I have to listen to his expert to see what he's got to say about this. And their license will be on the line as to whatever representation is made here.
Mr. Galvin, I have a practical question. I mean, Mr. Parisi is going to build his house and sell it to somebody, and someone's going to buy it. A year from now, let's say it turns out the problem really is worse. Who's financially on the hook at that point? I mean, is the fact that we put this condition on that needs to rectify, is that then binding on the new owner?
Well, if we have to do a deed restriction, Tom, we can. I think that Wayne has to put them on notice that we're reserving drainage jurisdiction for a period of 2 years. So, and from the time that the CO is issued. It's always worked in the past, so I expect it's going to work this time.
Lori told.
If we can have Kathy Muller come and discuss the calculations and the storage, I think that will greatly benefit everyone in the conversation to understand how much more storage is going to be there than is necessary.
I just want to say I accept what Scott's saying, and then Wayne agrees that it's been a little excessive. He saw it, and yes. My gut is that the 3rd, if we can have a 3rd dry well, it should theoretically solve the problem, but I need engineering to convince me of that. All right,
We're going to
give it to me.
Thank you.
So let's get the engineer on.
Go ahead, Ms. Alfonso.
Ms. Muller, if you could please state your name and be sworn in to give testimony in this matter.
Sure. Catherine with a C, Muller, M-U-E-L-L-E-R. I'm a principal at the firm of Page Muller Engineering located in Warren Township, New Jersey.
All right, now raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. Spell your full name. State your full name. Spell your last name.
Catherine with a C, Muller, M-U-E-L-L-E-R.
All right. And provide me with 3 boards that you've appeared before recently. Do not include Summit.
Township of Warren on Monday, Madison Township or Madison Borough, Watchung Borough.
That's 3. Stop.
And I think I was in front of Summit early in my career for Russell Place as I date myself.
Yeah, was I there? I don't know. Mr. Muller, do you accept your credentials?
We will. Welcome, Ms. Muller.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Whenever I don't say exclude the town I'm working in, somebody invariably says they worked in my town, and I've been in most of these towns for quite a while. So
Fantastic.
I wouldn't be asking you if I was positive I knew you.
All right, Ms. Alfonso, let's
Thank
go.
you.
Thank you.
Ms. Muller, could you please describe the proposal, the existing site, and this whole stormwater management plan?
Absolutely. So as we're all well aware, there was an existing house on the property. Mr. Parisi has removed all the improvements, including the driveway, and has constructed a house and a detached garage under his building permit. We did have a previous just regular lot grading plan that got reviewed in-house by Lori Toth and approved, and that's why his project was moving forward. At that time, we proposed the new curb at 2 feet setback as required by code due to the extensive removal of the curb during construction. Ms. Anderson deemed that it would require variance. So Mr. Parisi proceeded forward with the plan as approved and variance free. That's why it's currently under construction. At that time, we had proposed an increase in impervious of 762 square feet. And per the city code, we designed 2 chamber dry wells that would collect the volume equivalent to 3 inches over that increase. We are collecting a portion of the new roof of the home and the detached garage in its entirety. That area was sufficient to cover the 762 square feet of increase. This is a very standard requirement throughout the state of New Jersey. The 3 inches represents the change from what you would typically get from a lawn area to impervious. So now that we're in front of this board with the requested variance for the setback for the curb, this has widened the driveway from approximately 9.9 feet to 11.2. It gives it a little bit more room as the future owners of the home access to the back of their home to the detached garage. This also increased the impervious. We looked at the site as a whole. We also looked at the zoning. One thing I want to point out is, as proposed tonight with the variance, we still comply with the allowable impervious per the code. The allowable is 40%, and we're just a couple square feet under that. At that time, we also reevaluated the dry well system that we had originally designed, slightly over-designed. There's still adequate capacity with the 2 chambers to collect 3 inches of runoff off the new increase, which is 889 square feet. It's a straight math calculation. And when Wayne had the machine on site, as he had said, we did do soil testing. We had a soil engineer go out to confirm that this system would comply with the state BMP regulations. 2 portions of that are the distance from the bottom of the stone within the chamber dry well system to groundwater. We're compliant at a 2-foot separation. And that also that the soil has permeable capabilities. If you design in clay, they'll fill up, they won't drain within 72 hours, which is required by law. We yielded a permeability rate greater than 1 inch, and these will drain within that time. So as we were talking before about the volume of water coming off the property, it's been stated we have a 20-foot vertical drop from Elm Place to the rear of this property. The whole property drains to the rear. We don't have any opportunity to back pitch it to get more of the front yard to the roadway. We just can't buck grade with that severe of a drop to the back. So the runoff that was coming off this property before construction is still headed in the same direction. We're not changing any drainage patterns. What Wayne had alluded to, and I actually was at the site maybe a month or two ago, we were talking about the curb at the curb line up at Elm Place. Typically when we design a driveway, we either have a little bit of a curb reveal, but then we put in a high point before we start going down grade on the driveway. This enables and keeps the road water in the road. That curb had been removed and the driveway came straight down from the curb line. So we were receiving runoff from Elm Place that was getting into our driveway and therefore towards Mr. Schnipper's property. So I believe that the combination of putting in the drop curb at Elm Place or replacing that drop curb, putting in a slight elevation change for a high point at the beginning of the driveway, and also the stabilization of the property. When it's all lawn and not dirt, that will help not only decrease the volume of runoff from the property, it'll also slow the runoff, so you won't see that large surge or as large of a surge that you would see under a property under construction. I also saw some pictures that Ms. Toth took. This happens on sites that are under construction. These silt fence that we put up to try and filter the water impedes the water as well. So if you witness some ponding on the site that was under construction, that's just a result of the silt fence that's doing its job. So that's the stormwater and the design in a nutshell. We've talked about adding an additional dry well or chamber dry well. This will increase what's required by city code by 50%. So I can't say that no water is going to run off the site. It is always naturally run to the rear, which is the northwestern portion of the site. But I can tell you that the volume that would be collected within these chambers would reduce what's going to the back. Again, we have the portion of the front house. We actually put some thought into how we were tying in these roof leaders as well. We have roof leaders on the left side of the house and on the right side of the house. The roof leaders that come down on the right side would hit the driveway and would run down the impervious fairly quickly. The left side goes to lawn. So we're capturing the roof leaders on the right side to slow that water down, while the roof leaders on the left side will go to grade. This will slow it down as it goes over the lawn and also allow for some absorption. We're also collecting the detached garage in its entirety. This is located about 40-45 feet from the rear property line. So we're collecting that versus putting it to grade as it's adjacent to as closer to our rear and downhill neighbor. So I believe I did the design, I signed the drawings, that this is an adequate and appropriate solution with the 2 dry wells. 3 dry wells obviously would be 50% more storage. So I think that's about it for the design. Again, the purpose we're here for the variance, we're replacing the curb in kind where it was for the existing or the previous home. It will allow for more room for the future homeowner to get to the rear. 9.9 is very narrow. We'll be at 11.2. We'll give them some breathing room to access the proposed garage in the rear. And again, we're complying with the impervious coverage on the lot. And that was critical when we actually did widen the driveway and include the curb.
All right.
Thank you. I would submit Ms. Mueller to the board for any questions.
Any questions from members of the board for Ms. Mueller? Hearing and seeing none. Mr. Schnipper, do you have any questions for Ms. Mueller?
I do. Have the initial 2 dry wells already been constructed, or has the 3rd dry well that's been promised been constructed yet?
Just the 2 have been constructed, but the roof leaders have not been tied in yet.
Correction, we just tied them in, Kat.
Okay, recently tied in.
Because even during the reason why I'm concerned and the reason why I'm asking is that I find that even during ordinary routine rainstorms that I'm still getting more water than I was previously. So that's why I asked if all 3 had been installed yet.
They have not, and I reviewed the photos earlier today. It is apparent that the water was coming from this site. As you could see, some silt in the water. Typically, it'll be clear, it'll run across the lawn and maybe less obvious. The 2 dry well pits were excavated and they were full. And after the storm where Ms. Toth was out and took the pictures, they drained, which was a nice in situ test for the system. Like I said, we did do lab testing that they will comply with the state standards, but having the fact that they did drain and did not need to be pumped out after the storm bodes well for the system.
Okay. Any further questions, Mr. Schnipper, before we move on? Okay, thank you. Ms. Alfonso, any further witnesses?
That's all. Thank you.
Okay.
I would submit this application to review by the board.
Mr. Galvin, before we move to board deliberations, we need to give Mr. Schnipper an opportunity to offer any commentary on the application.
Yeah, I think we should. Mr. Schnipper, raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm testimony about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State full name for the record, spell your last name.
Scott Schnipper, SCHNIPPER, 134 Maple Street, Summit.
Fire away.
I just wanted to read a brief statement. It'll only take about a minute, which I composed last week in response when I first received the registered letter from the attorney notifying me of this meeting.
Yeah, please proceed.
Thank you. Since the redevelopment of 17 Elm Place began in the second half of 2019, my property has continually suffered flooding from excess drainage of water flowing onto and through my yard. Mr. Nicola entered those photos from one single incident, which was not the recent tropical storm. This has occurred at both the northern boundary between 128 Maple and 134 Maple, as well as the southern boundary between 138 and 134 Maple Street, and has been a strong enough torrent to wash away the gravel from my driveway along the northern boundary, leaving a residue of sediment and topsoil throughout my yard, forcing my sump pump to operate continuously during these episodes and resulting in a river-like flow of water coursing all the way to the nearest sewer opening at the corner of Maple Street and Ashland Avenue, 100 or 200 yards from 17 Elm Place. Finally, I must note that Parisi Brothers' dereliction in March 2020 in draining a 6-inch pipe spewing wastewater, which there is also a photo filed with Mr. Nicola, from the western rear of 17 Elm Place directly onto my property, leaving me to deal with the consequences rather than draining the wastewater into a sewer or otherwise managing the adverse effects of its own construction. And due to this damage and the threat of worse to come, notwithstanding the 3 dry wells, which I now understand I've been promised, or which the city has been promised, but due to this damage and the threat of worse to come, which has been borne by my property more than any other, and the callous disregard for neighbors shown by this developer throughout, I must say before finishing that I have not spoken to Mr. Parisi, he has never reached out to me, and that the silt fence was only installed after I notified the city of flooding earlier this spring as a result of I believe, when the waste pipe was installed. I must oppose Parisi Builders' application for variance relief for the improvement of the new home by the realignment of the driveway and the ratification of the existing garage until these drainage matters are satisfied completely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Schnipper. I don't believe there's any other members of the public in attendance. So with that, we can move into deliberations for the board. Mr. Galvin, would you want to remind us the conditions?
Yeah, I have 3 conditions at this point. One, let's flip this page. Here we go. 1, landscaping on 15 Elm Place is to be established, is to be agreed to between the parties. 2, the applicant shall provide 3 dry wells to be reviewed and approved by the board engineer to show that there will be no drainage impact on the rear property. I guess we're talking about Mr. Schnipper's property.
Yes.
And 3, the board reserves drainage jurisdiction for a period of 2 years from the issuance of the CO. So the way I see it is, if this project does not drain properly, Mr. Schnipper will be able to alert us to that, and we'll be able to make some other arrangements for this. And in my experience in Summit, whenever I've included this paragraph, we've never had anybody come back and say it hasn't worked out right. So I'm expecting Mr. Parisi and I'm expecting Ms. Muller to devise a plan that will keep Mr. Schnipper from complaining to the board that he's getting an undue amount of water. The other thing that I will point out here is that it is significant that whether or not the board acts or doesn't act, that post-development runoff cannot exceed pre-development runoff. And that's pretty clear. And if it does, that's a nuisance. And the owner of the property will be in major trouble if this matter goes to court. So I think it would be sensible to make sure that we eliminate the drainage problem on Mr. Schnipper's property. Does everybody understand that?
Yes.
Okay. Get it done. I know you guys can do it. Get it done. All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. I will open for board deliberations. Who'd like to start us? Mr. Mullen, you haven't had a first crack at it. What would you like to say about this application?
You're doing a good job, Mr. Chair. You should be spreading around these inputs.
Sharing the love. Yeah.
I didn't know we were getting called on tonight.
Yeah, I know Caitlin's sitting there waiting, but she's gonna have to do the second.
So I am very mindful of Mr. Schnipper's concerns here. And after hearing everything, it seems like the best way to remedy them is for Mr. Parisi to address all the conditions that Mr. Galvin just articulated. Right now, we have an unimproved or a moderately improved property with a lot of, I'll say, construction phase problems that create a lot of runoff. So what we need is that property to be, properly curbed, have a proper lawn, and have all those things that can absorb water, have those dry wells installed, and to make sure that jurisdiction is retained so that we can monitor their effectiveness. With that in mind, the variances themselves don't really seem to be a major issue here. I think it's the knock-on effects of this development that are the concern here. The driveway encroachment seems like there's a good situation with the neighbor whom that affects, given by his lack of presence there. And same would go for the garage, the detached garage encroachment on the side setback, so or the rear setback. This is a water issue in my mind, and I'm supportive of the application to the extent that it actually winds up remedying the issues at hand.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Mullen. I'm very concerned about the water issues here, but I want to tell Mr. Schnipper, I've been on this board for, I guess, 12 years now or so. And what Mr. Galvin said is correct. If Mr. Dower looks at the proposed water plans and says that, yes, they adequately address it, or you need to do X more, I can't recall anybody ever coming back and having had a problem that was not fixed. So I place a lot of faith in Mr. Dower's judgment on that, and I hope you do too, because I agree with Mr. Mullen. I think other than that, this is a good application, but we definitely want to make sure Mr. Dower takes a close look and says absolutely that his professional opinion is that the proposed dry wells are adequate to protect the neighbors.
Yeah, I'm inclined to support this as well. The variances are relatively small, and I actually think it's rare that we see 3 dry wells for a property this size. I went out to the property and it's pretty steep. And I think that when the leaders are tied in, which it sounds like they are now, I also think if the arborvitae are planted on the neighbor's property, like you suggested, that right now it looks like on the neighbor's property next to where the driveway is going to be, there's a lot of ground cover, and maybe those arborvitae will help absorb some of the water as it runs down the driveway and also help with the situation. So I'm inclined to support this because I think that when everything is finished, it should significantly reduce the water runoff on Mr. Schnipper's property. And then I feel confident that if it doesn't, we have the jurisdiction that you can come back to the board and we can try to fix it again.
Okay.
One thing I wanted to
Thank you.
mention,
Yep.
there was one comment I remember in Krista's letter where she was referring to 8 inches of clearance between the driveway edge and the property. I just wanted to address that because it seems to me that no one would actually be getting out of a car at that point in the driveway. So I just want to make sure we address that. I don't think it's going to be a major issue, but I don't think we really talked about that in the testimony at all. But I don't think it would be a practical location to exit a vehicle, so there wouldn't be a trespass issue that was cited.
Thank you, Mr. Mullen, for reminding us back to what the actual variances are seeking relief for. But it's a good observation, and something certainly I suppose too will be addressed in review of that landscaping for the adjacent neighbor, if for whatever reason they deem access necessary, from that point in the driveway. But yep, I'll reiterate and reaffirm what my fellow board members shared. I visited the property today. Agree, it's an unusual property given its steep slope. And certainly now it's in complete condition. Mr. Parisi and his associates certainly will work hard, I'm sure, to remedy a number of the unfinished conditions. And with what we've addressed tonight, hopefully resolve the stormwater management issue that we see today for Mr. Schnipper moving forward. So with that, I'll entertain a motion with regard to the application.
I'll move to approve with the conditions that Mr. Galvin outlined.
Thanks. Have a second?
Second.
Who said that?
Caitlin.
Ms. Schwartzstein.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Nicola.
Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Yes.
Mr. Yuko,
Yes.
Mr. Laderi,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Mr. Schwartzstein,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
and Chairman Spur.
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Alfonso, Mr. Parisi, and thank you also, Mr. Schnipper, for joining tonight.
You know I'm old when Catherine turns into Caitlin.
We'll get you out of here soon, Dennis. Don't worry.
Oh my God.
May I just ask you a question of not having been before the zoning board before? Who is Mr. Dower?
Mr. Dower is the board's engineer.
Could you spell his surname for me? In fact, could you give me his full name?
I don't know his first name.
Chris
but
Dower, D-O-U-R. I don't know what the firm is.
Oh, sorry, his formal title is what?
He's the board engineer.
If I may, Mr. Schnipper, the engineers who will be reviewing this will actually be the city engineers, and that's Aaron. Oh my gosh, now Dennis, I'm.
Traeger.
No, I'm
Thank you.
requiring, listen, stop. I'm requiring Christopher to look at it.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know it's gonna be the municipal engineer.
My
You're gonna have
mistake.
Christopher, my guy, is gonna look at it.
Okay, my
Right,
mistake.
Scott? You understand what I'm saying? There's multiple engineers here. The board's engineer is gonna look at this.
Right.
And we let him go because we didn't know that it was an issue, okay? I'm sorry to you.
No problem. I just wanted to get my I's dotted and T's crossed. Thank you. I
Chris
appreciate it.
Dower, he's with, what's the name of the firm?
Is he with Mazer?
Was
Yes.
it
Mazer.
Mazer?
Thank you.
They have multiple engineers, but Chris is our guy.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you, everyone. All right, Chris, let's, I think we have what, one set of resolutions for approval and minutes as well.
We're actually going to need to move the 41 Oakley resolution to the following meeting. So we just have the minutes for July 20th to approve. So would somebody like to make a motion?
So
Motion.
moved.
Yuyuka,
Second.
second, Ms. Newell.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Not opposed.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you. I'll get on 41 Oakley. Don't worry about it.
All right.
I'm
All right.
trying to
Thank you,
work out
everyone.
a new
All right.
system. I got a meeting tomorrow to talk to some important people to fix it.
Okay. All right. With that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.